I recently finished Return to Monkey Island and thought it was excellent. In fact, it might even be my favorite title in the entire series. I say this as a long-term Monkey Island fan. For proof, here's an incendiary tweet I made at Lucasfilm Games last year. I now know that Ron Gilbert, one of the original creators of Monkey Island, had been working on Return to Monkey Island for a year at this point, so... oops. Let's dive in. The game picks up right where Monkey Island 2 LeChuck's Revenge ends. After having bested LeChuck, a young boy named Guybrush and his brother Chucky emerge from the bowels of a theme park and find their parents. The background contains references to the events in the game. This ending really blew my mind. Was the entire story up to this point a make-believe adventure between two brothers? It would explain a lot. Guybrush has always been naive and somewhat childish. The world is obviously inconsistent with human history. There's no grog or coke machines in the golden age of piracy. The fourth wall is often broken. Ask me about Loom. It would have been a great ending for the series, and for Ron Gilbert, it was. He left LucasArts, and it was his last Monkey Island until now. When I heard Ron Gilbert and Dave Grossman were returning to the series, and that this game would pick up where Monkey Island 2 left off, I was very curious how they'd unravel this knot they'd created for themselves. They were particularly clever. Those parents in Monkey Island 2 were not Guybrush's actual parents. Guybrush and Chucky were just pretending that they were. Little Guybrush emerges to find his real father, also named Guybrush Threepwood, on a park bench. Guybrush Jr. tells Guybrush Sr. that a lot of his stories don't feel finished, which is important foreshadowing. Jr. mentions that the secret of Monkey Island doesn't even cover the secret. Guybrush Sr. says that's not what the story was about, but he does have another story that is specifically about that. And so the game begins. From this point on, the narrative apes the movie The Princess Bride, where Guybrush Sr., somewhat unreliably, tells Guybrush Jr. what happened in the game we're about to play. It's lovely. This narrative device seems to answer all the questions you'd have at the end of Monkey Island 2, as well as how the other games in the series fit in. Guybrush Jr. has his own memory of his father's stories, and they differ from Guybrush Sr.'s memories. When you're playing a Monkey Island game, are you experiencing the story for the first time as Guybrush Sr.? Or are you in a retelling? Perhaps it's one of his children role-playing a story that they'd heard and misremembered. The Grog Machine exists in The Secret of Monkey Island because the story had been retold so many times that at some point someone added in a detail that didn't make sense, but it stuck. It's a game of broken telephone. Who else has been retelling these stories? The existence of the infamous Ask Me About Loom scene now implies that yes, the employees of LucasArts are retelling the story too, in the form of a point-and-click adventure game. On a surface level, the Monkey Island games are comedies about being a pirate, but they're really about the power of storytelling. Let's discuss the controversial ending. The game ends following a gauntlet of puzzles that Guybrush must solve. Each puzzle provides a piece of information that you have to piece together to solve the final puzzle. Once you do, you open a door and emerge. Back on Mealy Island? Everyone's happy to see you escape. It seems Guybrush has been working on something like an escape room and has emerged into a themed area. He talks about being a flooring inspector, and Stan appears to be the puzzle designer. You grab a key, unlock a chest, and discover that the secret of Monkey Island is in fact a stupid gag t-shirt. We cut back to Guybrush finishing the story with his son, who questions the truth of it all. The choice of what Guybrush Sr. says next about the secret is up to the player, and affects the after-credits scene. Elaine mentions a potential new adventure to Guybrush, leaves him to himself, and he stares off, in thought. We fade to black. I spent some time on Reddit and Twitter this week, and a lot of people were quite upset by this ending. Many felt the story ended too abruptly. There's a big lead-up to a final confrontation with LeChuck that never happens. I understand where they're coming from, because audiences have expectations about how a story should be told, and it feels weird to have that taken away, despite the foreshadowing. However, I also think that we've seen the final confrontation before, in basically every other Monkey Island game. Do we really need to see it again? Was there any doubt that Guybrush would prevail over LeChuck? The beginning of the game explicitly reminds you of the meta-narrative of the series. Then when Guybrush Sr. starts the story, it tightens up and plays it straight. The story sucks you in with all the characters and beats. Finally, when it reaches a crescendo, ideally as the player is the most engaged they've ever been, they pull back the curtain. The end. I hope we had fun this time around. The old gag of, I went to the Grand Canyon and all I got was this stupid t-shirt is silly, but there is something to it. Many people who visit the Grand Canyon are struck with awe at the sheer size and beauty of it all. You can take photos of it, sure, but those will never compare to the presence of being there and experiencing it for yourself. It's natural to want to extend that feeling after you leave, but you never can. Consumer culture means, sure, we'll sell you a t-shirt, but we might as well be explicit about the fact that no t-shirt will ever be equivalent to the experience itself, and it's funny that you'd ever think so. In a game series that explores the art of storytelling and the feelings you have along the way, it's absurd to think that you could take any of it with you, or that seeing Guybrush fight LeChuck for the 100th time would make you feel any better. That ending is the stupid t-shirt, at best a token of the experience you already had. In the beginning of the game, Guybrush Sr. promises to tell a story about the secret of Monkey Island, and that's exactly what we got. Return to Monkey Island is the story of Monkey Island. We're hearing it again, and it's as funny and charming as it's ever been.